Commission. We'll go ahead and start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Alder Veronica Corpus-Dax.
Present.
Commissioner Sydney Bremer.
Present.
Commissioner Randall Petrowski. All right. Commissioner Darius Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner Autumn Linsmeyer.
Present.
Okay. Moving ahead with the approval of the agenda for the January 11th, 2021 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
I move approval. Oh, somebody beat me to it. Who was that? Autumn?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Linsmeyer and a second by Alder Corpus-Dax. Any further discussion? It's been a long time since we've had a meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that is approved. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the November 23rd, 2020 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Alder Corpus-Dax and a second by Commissioner Bremer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and moving on to regular business. Item number 1, consideration request of the interim director for the Department of Community and Economic Development to consider review and possible revocation of the short-term rental permit at 1135 Shadow Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These two requests, the first and second items were before the Plan Commission back on November 23rd. At that time, the Plan Commission recommended approval to send those to the council. They were allowed to continue to operate the short-term rentals, but was recommended for a 6-month probationary period, basically. So on December 1st, the council reviewed both of these requests. At the request of the aldermen, they've been sent back to the Plan Commission for further consideration. Listening to the council meeting, it sounds like the aldermen wanted to have residents another chance to talk to the Plan Commission, express their concerns. Maybe some weren't able to log into the meeting, or maybe some others had conflicts. So that's the reason why this item has come back before the Plan Commission, both of them. We kind of treat them as kind of back-to-back items or sister items, but they are two distinct items. They're different items that would have to be voted on separately again. Staff has no new further information to pass along regarding these items. Again, this would allow the neighbors to have another chance to share their input with the Plan Commission and have a discussion about both items. So staff is reaffirming our recommendations for both items tonight. That's consistent with the November 23rd Plan Commission recommendation.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any discussion amongst the commission? So there's no new information. Go ahead, Commissioner Bremer.
Just to clarify, Paul, is the owner of each property the same person, or are they two different owners?
They are two different property owners.
And they just happen to be across the street from each other?
It's a coincidence, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And as I understand, by reaffirming the original recommendation, it would be that probationary period. And when would the probationary period then start? At such time as the Commonwealth accepted the recommendation?
Right. So this would go back to the council for their consideration. If they were to support some recommendation, it would be on the day that they made that decision.
Thank you.
Paul, quick question. I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, the owners were on last time. Was this one of the properties that was actually up for sale at that time?
I don't recall that, no. I don't recall that situation.
Okay.
I do know that one of the owners is online. I'm not sure about the other one at this point, but one property owner is here.
Okay.
Question two, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Paul, just to clarify, what was council's action on it? They just referred it back to us for more testimony?
I believe so. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion. I think they had a lot of other items that night. They didn't have a lot of discussion. So I think, as I recall, the alderman just wanted to give the neighbors another opportunity to discuss this with the Plan Commission. That's my recollection.
Got it. Just want to make sure we're taking this up the right way tonight, if there's anything we were missing.
Go ahead, Alder Corpus Dax.
Yeah, I was under the impression from Alder Weary that he had more information that he was going to provide, but seeing the letter that he provided that's in the packet, it didn't look like there was anything additional that he provided. So, but that was his main concern, was that he wanted to provide additional information.
Okay. All right. So no new information. The recommendation isn't changed. And we talked to the owners last time on both properties, I remember. Okay.
So I move that we open the floor so that we might hear from anybody who wishes to speak on a specific item having to do with, I'm trying to remember which is which number.
1135.
1135 Shadow Lane. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Bremer, a second by Commissioner Daniels. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we are opening the floor for public testimony on this item, specifically the 1135 Shadow Lane. When you come forward to speak, if you would state your name and address, and please confine your testimony to 3 minutes, please. Like to speak on this item? Does it look like there's anyone that wants to speak on this item?
For anybody out there on their phone, if you hit *6, it will unmute you and you can just request it then if there's anybody that's not on the video.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
I think I would like to say something, if you can hear me.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Fisher. I live at 1124 Shadow Lane. My husband's name is Sean. Should I keep going?
Yeah, you go ahead with your testimony, please.
Okay. Nothing illegal happened. I just wanted to state that the owners of that property had a couple of parties and they assumed that we called the police, but we did not. They were taking pictures of our house and my husband went outside and said, "Why are you taking pictures of our house?" And he said, "Why did you call the cops on us?" And he said, "We didn't." And he wouldn't stop and talk. He walked away and then he drove away. And my husband tried to wave him down and say, "We didn't call the police. We just wanted to talk to him." And he made some kind of a hand gesture. I don't think he gave him the finger or anything like that. But we just wanted to say that we didn't call the police. We don't mind if people want to enjoy our neighborhood. We just want to have peace and quiet and to tell them that this is a residential area. We want it to be treated as such. This is where we live. I guess that's it, really. I just don't want to be treated like we're the enemy.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thanks.
Can I ask a quick question? What was the date of that incident?
We might be able to find it. I don't remember offhand. It was actually the day I think they had the last band, when they had the live band.
It doesn't have to be an exact date, but approximately how long ago was this? Are we talking in the last couple of weeks or a couple months?
No, it was months ago when there was going to be a Packer game and they had a live band at the home, and we happened to be out. we happened to be outside and the police walked by and my husband was chatting with them. So they assumed that we called the police, but we did not.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Was there anyone else that wished to speak on this item? Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Bremer, a second by Commissioner Linsmeyer. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Is there any discussion amongst the commission?
Just a question that I have. Weren't at least one of these property owners newish to the property, as in purchased it in the last year or so? Or am I misremembering that?
I think it's possible 1136, the other item may be a newer owner. 1135, I think they've owned the property maybe for a couple of years. It was a rebuild. It might be new ownership on 1136.
Okay.
I have notes from the that the 1135 was 2018. So that would be a couple of years,
Okay.
I guess, now. Any further discussion?
Sid has her hand up.
I was trying to get recognized, but I'm not quite sure where I am on the screen. I'm using a different one tonight. My apologies. Okay, what I'm understanding, I went back to the previous materials that Paul had put together for us when we considered this before, and it sounds as if the police were basically saying that the problems got resolved quickly, that the police felt that they could work things out with the owners so the problems would not recur. I'm surprised that there aren't any other people from the neighborhood, because I rather thought that the notion they wouldn't recur was just simply not enough to satisfy them, since it sounds like the noises and the bands and the loud talk and the arguments and so on were very disturbing. But the police seem not to consider that to be grounds for considering it a public or chronic nuisance. With that advice, I don't see any reason for us to change our earlier approval of the recommendation from staff approval.
I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bremer and a second by Commissioner Petrowski. Anyone else have anything else to say regarding this?
Maybe Sid, they were the people looking to comment maybe are hanging on to the next item. If I remember correct, there was a little bit more consternation about the 1136 versus this one.
I think you're
so
right.
maybe they're just hanging on politely until that item comes.
So for this item, 1135, I move that we affirm the staff's recommendation. And I believe that's what Randy seconded.
That's correct.
All right, we'll go ahead with a roll call vote then. Vice Chair Miller?
Aye.
Alder Corpus Dax?
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
Commissioner Petrowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Daniels?
Aye.
Commissioner Linsmeyer?
Aye.
And I will also vote affirmative on this. So that's a unanimous vote. Going ahead to the next city council meeting on January
19th.
19th. Okay, perfect. All right. And then moving on to item number 2, consideration will act on the request of the interim director for the Department of Community and Economic Development to consider review and possible revocation of the short-term rental permit at 1136 Shadow Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, we would again just reaffirm our recommendation from the previous meeting.
Did anyone from the commission have questions for staff?
If not, motion to open the floor.
Second.
All right, motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Bremer to open the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then with the floor open again, if you would just state your name and address, confine your testimony to 3 minutes. And if you are on audio only, is *6 to unmute yourself.
Madam Chairman and fellow commission members, my name is James McGrath Sr. I live at 1137 Thorndale Street. My property abuts 1136 Shadow Lane. Unfortunately for the neighborhood, this property has caused numerous problems. The police have been there numerous times. The Department of Public Works has had to deal with this place numerous times. On one occasion, my family had to witness a person urinating in the backyard in front of us. Another night, late at night, after the ordinance of the quiet time at night, a party of bachelorettes were screaming, hollering, and cussing and cursing. You could hear it all over the neighborhood. That occurred not at one bachelorette party, but at two separate bachelorette parties on two separate weekends. We're a neighborhood of people that have been living here 30, 40, 50 years in this neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. We have grandchildren that come visit us and such. It just has become intolerable at that address. We never had problems until this last year. This last year with the summertime, it was just out of hand too many times. What I like to see is, instead of just having a 6 month on this because the football season won't concur again until next fall, that we go until the end of the 2021 Packer football season with observation of this property. Because right now, there's the short-term renter in there. I think their house or something has fire at them. But once the football season occurs again, it's going to be like an Airbnb, and every weekend a different group of people are coming there. They don't live there. They don't care about anything. They just come and have a good time, and they leave, and they cause trouble in our neighborhood. So I would like to see this property have an extension under the observation of the Planning Commission for up until the end of the 2021 Packer football season. And I'd like to thank you, Madam Chair, and the Commission for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. McGrath. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
I do believe the property owner was on, or someone related to that. Now would be a good time if you are on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is Drew Leatherberry, 461 West Briar Lane, Green Bay. I'm one of the three property owners. I did have a chance to present on our previous conversation, as did Mr. McGrath. I don't believe any new information was presented tonight, but I will address what has been done since our last call. The three property owners, myself included, have put together a plan of how we're going to address privacy and also, continue enforcing any concerns with noise. We've specifically worked on some ways to communicate again about the ordinances and really stress those on the way in to the stay. We're planning on putting up a privacy fence around the backyard. And we have also started to research putting security cameras. Both the fence and the security cameras won't be installed until the springtime, I think for obvious reasons. And also when our short-term renter does exit. We don't currently have a date when that short-term renter will be out, but certainly as soon as that's happened, we will reasonably follow through on those couple of items. I just want to remind everyone that we have been very responsive. We've been communicative with the police. We certainly care about the neighborhood. We care about our neighbors, and we want to make sure that the area is, that rules and the fact that it's primarily a residential neighborhood. And so we're going to do our best to make sure that any renters are adhering to the same rules as well. And then just for the purpose of, what our intent is long-term, we are going to continue to seek renters that are staying in the property over a longer duration of time. Obviously, we do have on the weekends for Packer games, and I will say that we have connected with a number of folks that are going to be coming back on a recurring basis. Families that have not been the ones that have been at issue. We've looked back through our tenant history, so we are attentive and wanted to make sure that that we're not only giving the renters a good experience, but also our neighbors. So I appreciate all of your consideration. I think our current 6-month probationary period is sufficient for us to prove this back to you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherberry. Commissioner Bremer, go ahead and take yourself off mute. Sid, you're still mute.
Thank you. Different device than I've used before. Mr. Leatherberry, I did want to ask, I understand that this would not be an appropriate time to put lights and such in the backyard, but notifying your current renter and preparing paperwork to notify any future renters of the 10 o'clock noise ordinance?
Yes, we actually do have that in the guidelines that are provided and are out in the open, but we are going to actually include it in the confirmation, the communication that we have when they confirm the reservation. And then we'll also make sure that we're emphasizing that when renters arrive. So we're going to add those couple additional fail-safes.
Thank you. That's clearly important. As Vice Chair Miller noted, there is a difference in the kinds of complaints issued for the two properties. And in the case of your property, all but one of them were for noise that occurred after 10 p.m., well after 10 p.m., including all the way into the next day in one instance. So I would consider that particularly important. And thank you for responding to my question.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else that wished to speak on this item? All right. If anybody see any hands up? I don't see anything. So I would entertain a motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Bremer, second by, was that Vice Chair Miller? Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Was there any further discussion amongst the commission regarding this item?
I do have a concern that this seems like a more egregious series of problems in the past. Since the recommendation of staff was for a probationary period, assuming that indeed going to go to the, undertake the various changes that they've suggested, extending that probationary period would not be any detriment to them. And it might leave the neighbors with a feeling of greater protection.
Mm.
I stand ready to hear other opinions on that matter, though.
Well, I guess, Paul, is that, I mean, that's something that we would be able to do, is to change the probationary period to 1 year, correct?
Sure. It's arbitrary. It's certainly up to Plan Commission or ultimately the council, but sure, you can modify it.
We could change it simply to the end
I feel
of
like
the
it would
current. I would suggest the end of the current calendar year. Which takes care of most of the Packer season that Mr. McGrath had in mind.
Right.
So I guess I'll make that as a motion to amend the recommendation.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Bremer and a second by Commissioner Petrowski to, I'm down a computer today, so I I have less things to look at, but
to amend the recommendation to extend until the end of the calendar year, the probationary period.
Correct.
So we need to vote on that first before we vote then on the full motion.
Or you could just make the motion with that amendment to it, because it's already been.
Okay, good point. I'll do that. How does that sound to you, Randy?
Second.
Okay, all right. Okay, any further
I
discussion?
thought that's what I was seconding, so.
Good. We're on the same page then.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead with a roll call vote. Vice Chair Miller,
Aye.
Alder Corpus Dax. Was
Aye.
that, okay, sorry. Commissioner
Aye.
Commissioner Petrowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Daniels,
Aye.
and Commissioner Linsmeyer.
Aye.
All right, and I will also vote in the affirmative to move it ahead, again, with the extension of the 1 year probationary period.
And
that will be,
excuse me, Lisa, not 1 year, but to the end
sorry.
of the current calendar year.
okay,
A
to the
little
end,
bit less. Yeah.
right. So to the end of 2020, December 31st, 2021.
One.
Yeah.
Check. Got it. It takes a village.
Right, that'll go ahead to City Council then for the January 19th meeting. All right, and moving on to the third agenda item, it's a public hearing on the request to rezone parcels in the 1320 to 1330 block of Parrott Street from very density residential R3 to general commercial C1, submitted by John J. Young, property owner. And with the public hearing, this public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Green Bay Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or are only providing information in this matter, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. So if we could, I guess, get a brief overview from staff to get an idea of what the public hearing and the agenda item is about.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. This is a request for rezoning from very density residential R3 to general commercial C1. The properties are located in the 1320, 1330 block of Parrott Street. This is North Irwin Avenue here, I-43. North of the highway is the Wildlife Sanctuary. This is an interesting area and a variety of land uses here. We have some commercial uses along North Irwin Avenue. We have some light industrial uses that are to the north and to the east. And then we have some single family and two family homes that are kind of surrounding this property here. So the city's comprehensive plan, the red represents commercial. Again, you can kind of see the outline of the properties here. The yellow color represents a low density residential. Taking into consideration some of the surrounding land uses and some of the existing uses along Irwin Avenue, there could be a potential for a comprehensive plan amendment here to maybe eliminate that, but that's something for another day. But the comp plan does recommend low density residential here. And this is the current zoning of the area. This is the very density residential in kind of the tan color. You have some light industrial to the north, and then business park to the east, and then some highway commercial along North Irwin Avenue. So the applicant owns the 3 lots to the west here and has an offer to purchase on the 4th lot. He has an existing business two existing businesses, both on Irwin and on Parrott Street. So his hope would be to redevelop this property by obtaining this zoning change. I did talk to the applicant late today, just before the meeting, and he's asked that this item be held up. He's got some issues that he's looking into regarding the properties. I would suggest that to the Planning Commission that you move ahead with the public hearing so we can get that out of the way. When it comes to the action item, we'll have to recommend that it be tabled until the applicant's ready to move forward.
Okay. Thank you. So was there anyone, let's see here. Was there anyone looking to speak? Interested parties should be called. I guess we're looking for people who are in favor of this item. So if you are looking to speak in favor of this item, please come forward to be recognized. Is there anyone looking to speak in regarding, I guess, in opposition of this item? Is there anyone opposed to this item? Anyone looking to speak to provide information only? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the agenda item number 4, consideration with possible action on the request to rezone parcels in the 1320 to 1330 block of Parrott Street from varied density residential to general commercial, submitted by John J. Young, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the request of the applicant, this item should be tabled until the next available meeting.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Bremer, a second by Commissioner Petrowski. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead with a roll call vote. Vice Chair Miller.
Aye.
Alder Corpus Dax.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
Commissioner Petrowski.
Aye.
Commissioner Daniels.
Aye.
And Commissioner Linsmeyer. Commissioner Linsmeyer? Was that an aye?
Can you hear me?
I do hear you now, yeah. Okay, good. All right. Okay, perfect. All right, so then, and I'll vote in favor as well. So unanimously moving forward to or tabled until our next meeting. Okay.
Just to avoid confusion, I think that would be hard because we also have that special meeting that comes between now and then.
Right. Perfect. And I think the date of our, oh no, yeah, that one was I guess our next regular meeting is January 25th. So moving on to agenda item number 5, public hearing on the request to amend zoning ordinance 38-79 Easttown Mall to allow limited production and processing uses within the planned unit development at 2350 East Mason Street, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Paul, if you could pop up the PowerPoint, please. Thank you. Okay, I'll be pretty brief for the public hearing, and the next item would be consideration and possible action, so I'll get a little bit more detail at that point. But this is the property outlined in red. It's 2350 East Mason Street. It is really the center section of what everybody in town commonly calls the Easttown Mall, which is made up of a much greater area. Also includes a portion of the parking lot and the building itself. If you go on to the next slide, Paul. This is the comprehensive plan's future land use for the property. You can see it is all commercial in designation. And the next slide, please. And this is the zoning for the property. Now, it looks kind of like a mess out there. You got some C3 zoning, some R1 zoning, some R3 zoning. But if you notice the very heavy black line that circles sort of the mall proper, that is a planned unit development. This planned unit development was established in 1979 when the mall was originally built. Since that time, it's been amended once for a boundary change and a dozen times for signage changes. So there's actually about 13 or 14 planned unit developments on top of this site currently. And if Paul, you could go back to the original aerial. Well, you could go to the next one too, it'd be fine. Anyway, so this is the property. Since 1979, it's been designed as a commercial center, as a mall center, relatively auto-oriented in the outlots. Some major anchors were located out here. So you had Shopko on the far eastern end, a Cub Foods on the far western end, and a Kohl's department store sort of in between that. Those structures were infilled with about 160,000 square feet of multi-tenant structure, which was the interior mall. And during the time frame, I guess the last 4 decades, many other uses were built in freestanding buildings. So there is a Petco, there's an Aldi's grocery store, Hobby Lobby. The Cub Foods had closed and has now become individual retail spaces. And the Shopko has also closed. What the petitioner is doing, so this property has seen vacancies over the last several years. Most notably, probably the last 5 to 10 years, the mall proper, which is the in red, has been relatively vacant, as a lot of malls in the country have been. Petitioner is purchasing the property, and he is looking to re-establish or to establish a new use on the rear part of the property, and that would be limited production and processing. That is a small-scale light industrial designation that's allowed in all our commercial districts in the city with a conditional use permit. In this case, since it's a planned unit development, he is coming forward to propose a portion of the mall proper to take that light industrial use. There you go. You can kind of see the mall and the not perfect, but the outlined property. There are about 16 different property owners in this Easttown Mall area. If you go to the next one, Paul, might be more. There we go. So that's the building itself. What's being proposed is to relocate the few retailers and service businesses that are still in the mall up to the front, which would be the north side where it says relocated new inline retailers, and give them direct access into the parking lot, kind of an open air mall rather than an internal mall. Also would redevelop the former Office Max building. And then in the back of the mall with no frontage fronting East Mason or the parking lot for the mall would be that limited production user, production and processing, and then also their office space, as you can see back there. That is what is being proposed. So I'll wait to get more into it until the public hearing is concluded.
Thank you so much, David. All right, so with the public hearing on this agenda item, we are looking for interested parties who would like to speak in favor of this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this item? Is there anyone looking to speak to provide information only on this item?
Hi, my name is Catherine Johnson. I am one of the property owners. I live at 2406 Ruffed Court, so my property backs up. My fence line is directly on that red line there. My husband Sam and I have come to attend to learn more in regards to the proposed development. One thing we are particularly concerned of is that undeveloped space in the back there, we would like to maintain to keep undeveloped for our family and the integrity of our properties and our neighbors' properties.
It would be between Gandrud and our backyard there.
Sure. I did receive an email that did mention there is talk in this in regards to potentially creating that to be a residential space at one point. I personally don't have an issue with another business taking space in the space that Easttown Mall presently occupies, as long as that is not something that's going to smell weird or make a ton of noise that would bring down the cost of my property. I'm all for business. I don't like seeing mall be vacant. I think it would be great to have more business there. On the other hand, I do want to protect the integrity of our neighborhood. So that's what we came here today to do. Was I don't know if it's necessarily in opposition of what's being proposed currently, but we just wanted to make sure we had all the facts and details of what is here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Mr. Vaughn has his hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead with your name and address.
Oh, okay, this is Brad Vaughn. I live at 930 Ruffed Grouse Street. And I'm back behind the closed-in area back there. I've been a resident of that area for 40 years now. And one of the big things that neighborhood is because it's a pretty secure neighborhood right now, and there's one way in, one way out, and we've had some very success with the people that live in our area being able to raise their families and their children with not having to worry about things. And I guess what Ms. Johnson brought up there about, the residential areas are, and it's one of my big concerns also, is having residential areas put back in there and people being able to, I know when the Easttown Mall was going on and everything, we had a lot of times where we had a lot of problems with the fence being broken into and, knocked down and stuff. And people were started coming back there and traveling through. And that's the only time that we've ever had issues back there. And I'm just very concerned if another residential area gets put in there, it's going to cause a lot of commotion and chaos for our neighborhood. And I would be strictly, definitely opposed to having any type of residential area back there. And also the back behind there on those courts is where I'm talking, in that area. But as far as the actual mall area, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I have no opposition to any business except for if it's going to create, like she said, the noise or any type of odor type thing that goes on with that. So with that, that's all I have for now, and I appreciate you taking my comments.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Vaughn. Was there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Was there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. And moving on to the actionable item, item number 6, consideration with possible action on the request to amend zoning ordinance 38-79 to allow limited production and processing uses within the planned unit development at 2350 East Mason Street, submitted by GB Real Estate Investments, LLC, property owner.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So I think everybody is pretty familiar with the current environment for retail. So shopping malls really became dominant in the 50s, 60s. Again, as I had mentioned before, they were heavily focused on automobiles, which is why you see so much parking put out there. And also being a retail campus with very large parking lots and big box anchors. Easttown Mall is no different. That's exactly how it was developed. Again, for about 3 decades, it was very successful. The last decade, not quite. Yeah, Paul, you can kind of cruise forward. Okay, if you want to hold up a little. So really the commercial of the mall is not a current, I guess, successful model, to put it that way. They have been heavily hit mainly by consumer preference of not wanting to go to the large malls anymore. We've seen a resurgence of local small town type stores, Main Street style stores, but also took an incredibly huge hit with online retailing. So more and more malls are just kind of closing. You've probably been following Easttown for years. I believe it's changed hands several times over the last 5 to 10 years. And again, is about the 160,000 square feet of the mall. I would have to say there's probably about 10,000 square feet, maybe 15,000 that's actually occupied. The rest of the mall is empty. Theater is no longer in service. And to kind of give you just a quick kind of planning background, there's really 4 major approaches that are being utilized throughout the country for, they call malls gray fields, to kind of redevelop gray field sites. The first is take them all down, redevelop something new, whether that's new commercial businesses, generally not commercial, usually ends up going to an industrial, residential type situation. So that is one. The other 3 approaches really deal with rehabbing and reusing what is out there. So the first approach really is an evolution of a mall, and it's usually they get rid of the interior spaces, open it up to the parking lot, make it a air or a open mall. And then one thing that you'll see in a lot of malls is that they'll go for an entertainment or what's called an experience destination. So you'll add businesses in there that make an experience rather than a shopping. You know, the 70s, 80s, shopping was the experience. The new consumers, that's not the case. So oftentimes you'll see things like Dave & Buster's, give you an example, in another mall in our area, that's being used to pull in new customers, taverns, theaters, game rooms, laser tag, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing they go with as their primary anchors. Another thing that's often done is to take the anchor stores, change those into usually high density residential. So you put a lot of units in there. That captures an automatic sort of captured market of consumers. Oftentimes those could be senior housing. And then the infill stores usually in the mall section then cater to those residents primarily. That is another very common and very successful way to redevelop mall sites. The last option, which is the one that's being proposed here, but really still at the very early stage, is to, again, reduce the amount of retail space within the mall, bring that out to the front, and then add a warehousing or a light industrial element to the mall itself or to the property itself. You generally don't want that to be seen by the other retailers or to be out front. You want that in the back. But the buildings are really designed well for that type of use. They usually have very high ceilings. There's no load-bearing walls on the interior of the building, opening them up for more of a production type scenario or warehousing type scenario. Oftentimes have loading docks and loading bays already in place. And it's often preferred because it is less expensive. And generally the other options really require a specific area. You have to have an area where people want to live. Urban malls tend to do that. Put residential in there. The entertainment set of activities, and you have to have those types of businesses that want to come into that environment. So those are sometimes more difficult. Warehousing is pretty quiet. It doesn't have a lot of impact, and it's generally an option that is chosen. In this case, the petitioner, Green Bay Real Estate Investment, LLC, they are requesting to do that light industrial type option. As this is a planned development, we can narrow down that recommendation even a little bit tighter. And we could limit that down to just limited production and processing. So that would occupy about 2/3 of the building. And Paul, if you go back to the PowerPoint, I'll kind of go through those slides real quick right now. Thank you, sir. So again, this was the mall itself, and that's only the center portion. Hobby Lobby and Kohl's is not part of this property, but we have your email and stuff up, Paul. Thank you. So you'll notice in the center there, about 2/3 of the property would either be office space for the production user and the production user itself. That rear drive aisle in the back is very, very wide. It is probably about 80 feet wide, very suitable for truck traffic to go down. It's a loading and unloading area right now. And again, there is vegetation to the south and also auto dealership to the south as well. So the impact there is pretty minimal. You can go to the next slide, Paul. So this is how the mall looks today. And if you click on the next one, once the retailers are moved to the front of the mall, again, to be a more open air type situation, you'll see they'll have individual entrances at the front. All the existing tenants would not be displaced, and you probably have a much better ability to attract other tenants when they have visibility from the parking lot and from Mason Street. And the next slide, Paul. So this is the site. I did not circle the property itself, but in discussions with the developer, so only thing that's being requested tonight is an amendment for that light industrial type use, the limited production and processing. But what you'll see is kind of this developer's thoughts on what could potentially happen here as well. Again, as the property owners of the neighborhood to the south had mentioned, there's discussion about future residential on that southern property or a potential sale to an adjacent property owner. And then you'll notice in the parking lot is a possible in-lot development. And that would really kind of be something that could mimic what you see on the front on Mason Street, East Mason Street. Those are called outlots. They're outlots to the mall. So that central drive aisle could become a drive aisle, like a road, and you could have development on both sides of that, reducing the parking lot, which isn't really necessary with a vast majority of the commercial space no longer being commercial. And also the preference of people to drive so much and to have such large parking areas has kind of been reduced over the last quite a few years. So this is kind of the thought that the developer has for the future. Now, I had mentioned earlier, there's about 16 different property owners out here. So what city staff will be planning to do in probably early spring is to kind of convene a meeting with all of those property owners, kind of get a collective vision of what they think the future of Easttown Mall is going to be, working with the city. And what we probably do is repeal all those planned developments that are out there right now that started in '79 and put one brand new one over the top. It would not only encompass this petitioner's property, but it would likely encompass all of the mall owner properties. So you have a consistent development throughout. So you can expect to be notified and hear about that stuff coming in the future. But again, with that many different property owners, it takes a lot of coordination. Many of them are corporate. They're not in the area. So, but what's happening right now is to kind of get the capital to start running the mall and relocating the tenants. We have to get that limited production and processing use in there. And Paul, if you go down to the next slide, please. All right, so I would be amending zoning ordinance 3879, which is the original creation ordinance for the mall. And these sections just kind of section 3 deals with land uses in that planned unit development. And the commissioners have those in their packets. They are online. So it would allow limited production and processing uses as defined by the code to be established and occupy the rear portion of the multi-tenant shopping mall building as depicted in Exhibit A, and I put a little insert of Exhibit A. It's what you've been looking at. Retail and service business shall occupy the northern section of the building with individual storefronts and entrances directly from the parking area. Any and all outdoor display and storage associated with that limited production use on the property would be prohibited. That would be in the front or in the back. Commercial truck traffic, delivery staging, loading, unloading, and any other type of accessory use to that limited production use would be prohibited on the north face of the mall. So obviously you have that 80-foot drive aisle in the back, you have the garage doors. That's what they would have to use for any type of staging or truck traffic. So I kind of call this a Band-Aid PUD amendment until we can get all the owners together and do a full redevelopment plan for the mall area, for the greater mall area. Staff is recommending approval of the PUD amendment with the conditions as listed in the draft planned unit development.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave.
Sure.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Miller.
Dave, as always, I appreciate your thoroughness on this. I do think it might cause a little confusion, however. And I think you were attempting to wrap it up there at the end in what we're actually talking about today, which is simply just amending the PUD to allow this type of usage within there. I think it should be make it clear to the rest of anyone else that's interested in listening right now that we're not talking about increased residential development or other development on the site. This is specifically for this purpose. It sounds like there'll be some other things going on down the line, but I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that this is what we're talking about, not some of those other things that.
Correct. Yep. This would only address the limited production and processing use as you saw on those maps.
Hey, Dave, I do have a couple of quick questions. One, two-part question. One, do we know the ETA if this is approved? And two, do we already have to address the concerns of some of the neighbors? Do we already have a company for the production site in the back already identified, or is that still open up in the air?
Well, the petitioner is online, and he can probably address that if he so chooses. But the point I would want to make, limited production and processing, by definition, is very small scale. The tenant that goes in there today could change in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. So you really have to look at the limited production rather than the tenant that's going in. However, as I had mentioned, the petitioner's here, and he may be willing to answer that.
Then to follow up, if I might, David, I've gotten a little bit confused over the limited production and processing, which you said was a narrower definition than I believe the other one was light industrial.
Correct.
But the petitioner, Mr. Barrett, in his letter, identified light manufacturing, retail, office, and residential. So what's your recommendation here, and what exactly does limited production and processing mean?
Sure. So the scope of the ask for this meeting and this PUD amendment is just limited production and processing. So even though when the petitioner supplied his application, and I kind of went over sort of more grand schemes that was being thought of, we are holding off on that. That was going to require probably a comprehensive plan amendment in some cases, and also a lot more public input and owner input with the multiple owners. Mm-hmm. So the scope is very narrow, just to that limited production and processing. And I will just read you really quick the definition of that. So small scale activities that are compatible with retail sales and services. These uses produce minimal off-site impacts due to their limited nature and scale. Limited include, but are not limited to, apparel and other finished products made from fabrics, boat building and repair, computer and accessories, including circuit boards and software, electronic components and accessories, film, video, and audio production, food and beverage products, not to include slaughter, grain milling, cerealing, vegetable oil or vinegar production, precision medical or optical goods, basically glasses, signage, watches and clocks, wood crafting and carving, and wood furniture and upholstery. So the one thing that jumped out at me when I read that definition was boat building. I did confer with Paul Newmeyer, our zoning administrator. That is more like kayaks or canoes, not large scale boats. So you really have to look at that first sentence, compatible with retail and service businesses. So it is, which
basically means no noxious smells and no loud noises, right?
Generally so, yes.
Thank you.
Was there any further discussion amongst the commission?
One more point of clarification, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I assume there's some urgency to this request that is precluding us doing a full, as you mentioned, contacting all the property owners, coming up with a grand vision for the entire thing. Obviously, that would take some time. I assume the user wants to get in there sooner than later, and that's why we're looking at this now versus taking time to do everything all at once. Is that an accurate assessment?
To my understanding, yes, that's pretty accurate. Again, the petitioner can probably answer this, but to renovate the front of that mall and to start doing some of the interior work and bringing it up to sort of new and fresh and clean, you kind of have to get that income rolling. Very difficult to do that without the tenants in that space. But again, the petitioner could probably answer that better than I.
I guess the reason I bring it up is obviously there's plenty of interest in the site and what's going to happen in the future with it. And, you know, any activity on the site is going to bring attention to that. And I think that's a question that's probably going to come up from maybe not only the other commissioners, but probably the media, neighbors, anybody else that's going to have any interest in this. And it's a question of mine of, you know, what is the plan for this? I mean, this is a nice first step, but I know we want to keep on topic today, but it would be good to know kind of what the timeline is for those other pieces, because people are going to be seeing this, driving by, seeing activity happen. You're going to want to know what's going on.
Right. And what I like to tell people is look at the petition as it was presented. That's what's going to happen. Anything beyond that, there is no guarantee, and there's no timeline. But obviously, time is of the essence for us. But coordinating that many people and getting ordinances written is not a fast process. We would hope that we could convene all the owners together again this spring, maybe bring something back summer and fall. If we can get agreement from all the owners. A little bit easier now with Zoom. It used to be harder with trying to get corporate owners in Houston and Arizona and California up here. But we're hopeful by the end of the year we could have something coming through that would address, if not the entire mall property, a majority of it. Because it was kind of puzzle pieced in there. It's very difficult to do one developer to be able to do a whole change to the feel of that mall when they own so little.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dave. I just wanted to make sure we're on the right track there.
Yep.
Additionally, I did receive a message from somebody looking to comment that wasn't able to when we were open before. So unless any other commissioners have anything to say, I'd like to make a motion to open the floor.
Second.
Yeah.
So a motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Bremer to open the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So if there's anyone that's looking to speak on this item, if you could just come forward and state your name and address, please.
This is Garrett Bader, 300 North Van Buren Street. I'd like to probably give a very brief overview, summarize a lot of what's been talked about, hopefully make it very clear for everyone what's going on now and what may go on in the future. So as was discussed, the original request, the only request for tonight is to allow for the limited production use within the mall building itself. I can assure the neighbors who have spoken that the user is quiet, odorless, there are no smokestacks, there's no kerfuffle of any kind. They'll be a good neighbor and a neighbor who, quite frankly, will have some good eyes on the back of the property. Some who've been back there already have seen a little bit of graffiti in the backside of the mall and some refuse around there. This will help stop that. So this is really a good user. Broadly speaking, for the mall itself, those who have lived around it and patronized it and driven past it can realize that retail and the nature of retail is changing rapidly. And the pandemic has put that on overdrive. So the mall showed up around 1980. Yours truly just turned 40, so I kind of grew up with it. I rode my bike down there around 1990. For those who remember Kmart or Prangy Way or Cub Foods, I was in all of them, probably way too often. That mall had energy then, it had life, the area did, and it doesn't have that right now in some respects. At the same time, too many people tried to synonymize the overall vibe of the area with what's going on at the mall. In other words, so goes the mall, so goes the East Town area. And that's just not true. It's a great area. We should be proud of it. We can make it very lively again. And this plan, I believe, can do it. For those who saw the rendering there, it's taking the users and turning them inside out. You have those external faces. It's swinging doors and neon, as I call it, to keep that customer activity to both support those new retailers and the ones around it. This will be essentially a power center where you have anchors on both ends and smaller retailers in the middle. As designed, the current mall building itself will have a new demising wall, which is roughly 70 feet off the front glass. For those who have ever patronized any coffee shop or hair salon or nail salon or even an insurance agent. Most of those folks in a strip center like this have about 60 feet of depth. So we're catering to those users who are active in the market and want to be there. Behind it, as has been talking about, will be the limited production user. So it's taking a facility that is no longer market appropriate or in demand for 100% retail use and making it a mixed use center that will really respond to the current demand, but in a way that I believe will make neighbors, adjacent businesses, and just the overall commercial environment happy and productive. To the point about timeliness, time is always of the essence usually in these deals. Being able to push forward on a more comprehensive plan for rezoning and a full re-imaging of the center will take time. And right now, to be able to start, not only from a financial basis, but also the needs of the users interested here, we need to respectfully start. So the hope is for your approval today, for City Council concurrence next week and February 2nd, that allow for acquisition of the property in mid-February and work to begin this spring. Visual changes will begin to be noticed in summer and early fall. The users will begin to operate in fall to late fall. And hopefully by this time next year, we have a very nice looking, far more productive, far more valued center. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Did anyone from the commission have questions for Mr. Bader? Was there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
I think you're still muted.
No.
Whoop,
Hear me
you're
now.
gone. Yes, we hear you. We don't see you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Oh, there it goes. For some reason, unmute wasn't working there for a second. My name is Faith Ainsworth. I'm at 920 Ruffed Grouse. Overall, I think of what me and my husband see of the plan, like we like the idea of revitalizing the Green Bay Mall. I think the big concern, which was also voiced by some of my neighbors, was just that making sure that whatever business is going into the, I guess the back area, which would be considered, just wouldn't be something that would affect our neighborhood. I would say that maybe something to consider would be rewording the way that the zoning is, just that like the farm production or things like that could cause issues wouldn't be allowed. I know I had seen in the news, which I don't know if it's true, about American Tent. I think American Tent would be a great company to go in there, but you never know what's going to happen down the road. So if you solidify it one way and then for some reason they needed a bigger area or whatever, we could then be stuck with whatever the wording was from the language, and you don't know what would be in there. That would be my biggest concern. And then also what they had stated about what for the housing to the back area of the grouse court. Just making sure that whatever kind of housing is bringing value. So, because if you put a bunch of, plainly speaking, apartment buildings or something like that, is going to devalue all of our properties. And so far, we've been here for about a year, and it's a great area, and we'd like to keep it that way and keep it on the upwards. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Faith.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? It doesn't look like anyone else is waiting to speak.
Hello?
Oh.
Brad?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess whoever goes in there now, you're talking about redoing everything and stuff like that. We had kind of a safeguard in our, for the coming up to our property, that surrounds the back end of the mall and stuff like that. And when that was all built and put together, Shopko was supposed to be in charge of keeping up that the privacy fence and everything that goes along the back that keeps everybody from the mall coming up into the residential area. I want to know if somebody's going to be, monitoring that and taking care of that part of it, because that's something that has to be done if, really to get this thing moving in any direction, I guess is, we need to safeguard our neighborhood, and we have that nice back fence back there that I was talking about before that, was put up at that time when that mall was built and stuff, and they were supposed to maintain that. So I guess my question is, who's going to maintain that perimeter for our neighborhood?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. And Mr. Bader, is that something that is within your realm?
Honestly, no, because that portion of the fence that I believe is being discussed is not part of this property. Keep in mind, as David alluded to earlier, you have multiple property owners in there. The property owners of the former Shopko box and that green space next to it are not part of my property. So I can't speak to what agreements were made in the past or who currently maintains or maybe doesn't maintain that fence.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If I can add, however, that if there are any maintenance issues with that fence, call the city. I mean, we have an incredibly efficient inspection division. We'll contact the owners, and again, in this case, it's not the petitioner, but we'll take care of any non-maintained stuff.
Thank you, David.
And then one more question to Mr. Bader that's raised by Mr. Vaughn's questions. As I understand it, the production area in the back would be sealed off from the retail area in the front and actually add as a further buffer to prevent people who are shopping at the mall from wandering out into the back area. Am I correct about that?
Right, there will no longer be a common corridor. So anybody who would patronize one of the retail or commercial spaces to the north off the parking lot, access to the limited production space or to the rear of the mall as they do currently.
Thank you.
You bet.
Was there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I'd entertain a motion to close the floor.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Daniels, second by Commissioner Linsmeyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And any discussion amongst the commission?
Only thing I'll say, Dave or whoever is going to be heading up, if you could just keep us up to date as this progresses along with the informational updates as go on. So just a request if you can.
And I would emphasize Jake's earlier comments about timing being important. The wonderful thing about this plan is it might finally break through something that has been a real eyesore and an energy drain in our community for a long time. So there's going to be a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, staff is very hopeful that this first step in the revitalization of that whole sort of sea of asphalt that we see out there right now, that we're going to progress pretty quickly. Very optimistic.
Good.
And you may recall that when the mall first came up for sale, there was discussion about potentially the city purchasing the mall, and the redevelopment authority decided against that because we had hoped there'd be developers that would come forward. So this is, I think, great for the city that we have a developer that's willing to invest in this area. And I am super excited about the work that our team will be doing in getting all those owners together out there, right? Because like a lot of you, I also grew up with the East Town Mall as well. So I'm like, yay, we can maybe get some things moving out there as well. So so we're really excited about the potential of actually doing some development in that neck of the woods.
Yeah. very exciting that the quickest, or soon as I can get to Bath and Body Works and get in and out, I'm great. So
I'm glad to have somebody with such a good track record as Garrett Bader too. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Bremer took the words right out of my mouth. It's really reassuring to see someone who's already demonstrated so much success in going into areas that were maybe challenged in the city and creating a great deal of improvement for them as Garrett. So with that, I would move to approve the proposal.
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Commissioner Petrowski, a second by Commissioner Bremer to approve the request subject to the draft planned unit development. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll go ahead with the roll call vote. Vice Chair Miller?
Aye.
Alder Corpus Dax?
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
Commissioner Petrowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Daniels?
Aye.
Commissioner Linsmeyer?
Aye.
And I will also vote in favor of approving the request subject to the draft planned unit development. And this will move forward to the next city council meeting of January 19th. And moving on to the final agenda item, item number 7, consideration with possible action on a request of Alder Veronica Corpus Dax to examine regulations regarding the current zoning code and drive-through or pickup lanes and the necessity of bypass lanes and or menu boards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to give you a few bullet points on the request from our report. So looking at the history of drive-throughs, we kind of trace that back to the original highway business district from the 1960s. That district was modified in 2006 to the highway commercial district. Some of the things we saw in the B2 district, like queuing and stuff, came in the 1980s. And then our current standards were, determined in about 2006. There's about 6 development standards that are included in the report, some development standards for the development of drive-throughs. Drive-throughs are defined in the zoning code. There is some improvement staff believes in some of the terminology. So we might propose that definition could be beefed up or improved a little bit. We kind of looked statewide. We kind of took a sampling of different communities and their drive-through requirements. The one interesting thing that we found is that many communities, almost all of them, didn't require a bypass lane. So I think we're one of the few that actually have that. Maybe that's a little cautionary, but we didn't find that with other communities. Otherwise, we did find communities had similar standards that we had as far as queuing, buffering, and accommodations for pedestrians in relationship to drive-throughs. We've reached out to Green Bay Metro Fire in the past regarding drive-throughs. I think we've got some correspondence for them where they're really not looking to participate in an ordinance change. They've kind of indicated to me that they'd like to remain neutral on this, so I don't have a strong recommendation from them from a life safety perspective. Likewise, we've reached out to our city traffic engineer, and he hasn't offered much comment as it's on a private property. He tends to comment more on the public right-of-way. So those are 2 entities we don't have a strong recommendation from at this point. Staff feels there are some potential changes that we could recommend. Again, eliminating the bypass lane might be one of those options that might be more efficient from a land use perspective. We could also improve the development standards, talking about menu board placement and width of those drive-throughs. And also where drive-throughs are allowed, there's one potential change where we could remove it from the downtown district. The reason being there's not always a lot of room in downtown properties to allow for a drive-through to occur. And we're really trying to promote walkability in downtown areas. So that might be an option we might propose. So as staff, we're suggesting that there could be some changes to or improvements to the drive-through language. I suppose the Planning Commission could also choose to do nothing as well, and we could just leave those requirements as is. But staff feels there's an opportunity to kind of revamp the ordinance, and we would suggest that we could bring back a draft for the commission members to review, and we could hash out some of those details moving forward. So at this point, we're looking for comments from the Plan Commission if there are some. I know Plan Commission did see recently 901 Main Street and that discussion about the drive-through, and that was a little controversial, I suppose. But again, I think staff feels we can improve the ordinance slightly, and we'd like to bring a draft back to you for your consideration.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yes. All right. Was there any discussion amongst the commission?
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I think that this is a great idea. Wise of us to revisit these types of ordinances from time to time to really be able to address the evolving needs of both the businesses and the citizens who are going to be living in different quadrants of the city, different sections of the city. I think that the idea of making these this particular ordinance more flexible is a really good idea. But I'd like to hear some other feedback on what everyone else has to say as well.
And I'm interested that neither fire nor the traffic engineer was interested in making any input here, which suggests that they don't see anything wrong with the current ordinance. So I'm wondering if Veronica Corpus Dax could say a little bit about what brought her to asking us to take a look at this.
So one of my concerns before move on is the removal of the drive-throughs altogether from downtown. I don't necessarily think that that's the best way to go. I think that there's opportunity there where a drive-through can work downtown. Obviously, that's not something that we would probably in a historical building, not necessarily something that we would want to, that would change the historical value. So that obviously wouldn't apply. But I do think that there's, the possibility there where a drive-through could benefit, some of the downtown businesses. So I wouldn't support fully removing that altogether from the downtown district. Bringing it forward was that we kind of had an ordinance that was different from some of the surrounding areas. So I think making that, kind of being more in line with what's going around in some of our surrounding city or surrounding villages as far as being on the same page in terms of drive-through standards and drive-through and pickup window standards. So it was kind of all over the board. And, we had with one of the more recent ones with downtown where we were saying we were implementing some standards that weren't in line with a different drive-through situation that we had downtown with the Shopko Pharmacy and saying like you need to have the bypass, but when we had the Shopko Pharmacy downtown, they didn't have that bypass lane, and that section of drive-through was longer than what was being proposed at 901 Main Street. So I think just having more of a standardization there was my reason for bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. My recommendation would be to take out the carte blanche, removing the drive-throughs from the downtown district altogether.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a carte blanche prohibition on drive-throughs would really be detrimental to downtown businesses. I mean, think of the creative ways that small spaces could be used for something like coffee shop that could really benefit from a single car drive-through that isn't going to create a dramatic backup. I also think that the market will sort. I think I'm repeating myself from when we talked about one of the proposals, I believe, but the market has a way of sorting out the larger scale drive-throughs that would be the kind of concern that we'd see in a tight downtown urban setting. Your Popeyes chickens, Chick-fil-A's, McDonald's, etc. They have very, very tight controls that they place on their franchisees about the volume of traffic that they need to demonstrate would be able to go through the specific space that they're proposing, whereas a smaller, more urban mom and pop type place would be able to possibly function and thrive with a more narrow, less restricted ordinance. I should say a more broad, less restrictive ordinance related to drive-throughs. But those are my 2 cents on that.
I think when we come back with a draft ordinance, I think the development standards would include some dimensions. Right now, we don't have a clear dimension for our drive-through widths, I guess. So we would specify something, and I think that width will be maybe larger than you think, because we do want to allow for door swings or for emergency people to get into the drive-through areas. So we may have it wider, but there may be a discount if there's multiple drive-throughs, that maybe those drive-through lanes could be less. But I think the bypass lane elimination makes sense, but I think we would still beef up the drive-through lanes themselves, make sure that they're wide enough for modern day vehicles and emergency access.
I would say especially so we have the possibility of getting out of the truck you're in, or emergency medical folks getting into a car that's in a drive-through lane.
Right. So, I've been thinking at least maybe something around 14 feet, or maybe something a little less, but that's a rough number of what we might consider. But again, if you had multiple drive-through lanes, maybe we'd go to something like 10 or 11, because there might be a room for others to get in there. So that's just some thoughts that we might present to you in the future.
So I guess,
do wonder, go ahead.
So I guess to make a longer discussion shorter, I would be in favor of moving to direct the staff to propose an amended ordinance as suggested.
With the downtown remaining, is that correct? We don't want to touch the downtown?
I'm sorry?
We don't want to touch the downtown district. We'd want to keep that in place.
I guess I don't understand. Would we target the downtown with this amendment, or?
No, I think we were suggesting that we could remove drive-throughs from the downtown district because of just the limited land area, I guess. But I think Alder Dax and yourself were saying that maybe we should leave. I just want to clarify you wanted to keep drive-throughs in the downtown area.
Yes. I wouldn't want to strike down drive-throughs from the downtown area. Okay. I think a way to come up with a more creative solution for drive-throughs in the downtown area to make it more approachable for smaller businesses, I guess, would be the way that I'd look at it. But I think that that's something that could be a work in progress over the course of the amendment and proposals and response, et cetera. But I would be against removing them carte blanche from downtown.
Right, and I think that's one thing that's kind of important when we look at the downtown, the nature of downtown, the land areas of downtown. We probably would put special conditions or standards on them that you may not find in a suburban setting or in a highway setting, if it's to remain in downtown. But yeah, it's not rocket science. I mean, we comb everywhere and take the good stuff from everybody else's codes. So
Smart.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that one of the things that you would be paying attention there is flow of traffic, which gets a little bit wilder downtown.
Correct. You know, I think
Just
there's other
making
things.
sure that the entrance and exits did not seriously interrupt the flow of traffic.
Yeah, and there would be other things. You know, we have what's called a floor area ratio. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever saw one of those Joe to Go's, or those small, they look like a toll booth.
Yes.
Drive through. That probably, you know, we have to build in conditions to not allow that type of use on a downtown lot. There's a lot of negative things that can happen, and so we would draft it to try to prevent those.
Would you all like to have a motion that we would like you to draft a new ordinance?
Yep, looking for some marching orders so we could go ahead and we'll bring something back at a future meeting.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Bremer and a second by Commissioner Petrowski. Paul, can you switch the screen back to the gallery? I don't know if I'm able to do that.
I'm sorry.
So much. No, that's okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I forget
So motion by
sometimes.
Commissioner Bremer, second by Commissioner Petrowski. Is there any further discussion amongst the commission? All right. We'll go ahead with a roll call vote. Vice Chair Miller,
Aye.
Alder Corpus Dax. Oh, okay. Aye. All right. Commissioner Bremer,
Aye.
Commissioner Petrowski,
Aye.
Commissioner Daniels,
Aye.
and Commissioner Linsmeyer.
Aye.
And I'll also vote in favor of moving that forward. So then there's no time frame that we're going to see it. It's just we're giving you direction to go ahead and draft it.
We'll keep it on the list. We'll move on it right away. I think you'll see it sooner than later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Paul. All right, and then moving forward to the informational. Number one, special meeting to be held Thursday, January 21st, 2021 at 6 p.m. for a single item, which is consideration with possible action on the request to authorize a conditional use permit for material recovery facility at 1156 Velp Avenue.
This is just going to be that item,
Yes, this meeting
and
was
like everything else is going to wait until the 25th.
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
This was a special meeting just to deal with the proposed auto salvage use. It has been to Plan Commission 4 times, I believe, and to Council once or twice. So I think at the last meeting in November, the Plan Commission thought, let's have a special one. We're going to get it over with and send off a recommendation. So yeah, just same time, 6 o'clock, but it's Thursday. It makes it a rough month because we have 3 meetings in a row, 3 weeks in a row. But you have to pay for having most of December off. So.
Right.
Hey, Dave, have the alders been notified of that meeting as well?
They have. So after the November meeting, I sent out a letter to all the property owners within a little bit over 400 feet. And in that letter, I basically said it was postponed. A new meeting would be coming in January. Provide me any information you have by the end of last year, by December 31st. I also contacted by phone both alders and by email the neighborhood association.
Okay.
Great.
And the attorneys from multiple parties that have been involved have also been contacted.
All right. Thank you so much, David.
Certainly.
All right. So, and then director's report.
Hey, that's me for a little while longer anyway. First of all, the last council meeting, there were just a couple of second readings for adoption that went through regarding parking and then that game day parking. And then the only 2 items were pulled were the ones you covered tonight. So we'll be sending those back on Shadow Lane. And then I guess the other big thing I want to tell you is that we have a new director, a planning director that will be starting February 1st. He needs to go to council for approval on the 19th. His name is Neil Steck-Schulte, and he happens to be on the meeting today. So I saw him just pop up.
Awesome.
Evening, everybody.
Good luck with the council. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, commissioners. No, I appreciate you letting me be a fly on the wall tonight and learning a little bit more about what's going on. Also want to certainly thank Cheryl and Dave and Paul for obviously all the work they've been doing these past several months. You guys have been plenty busy. I've been looking back at all the different meetings and different projects you guys have been working on, and all of the ones that are in the pipeline for now. I think it's a great growing community, and you've got a great team that really makes this a really, really great opportunity. So looking forward to hitting the ground running, hopefully on February 1st, and again, subject to council approval on the 19th. So just wanted to briefly say hello, and looking forward to working with all of you. So.
And how can I top that, right? Okay, I may be a little bit more excited than the rest of you are, but.
Thank you, Cheryl, for all you've done in the meanwhile.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Hey, you know what's great is that we have a great team. Our department rocks. I mean, we get it done and we all chip in, and that's why I love working for the department. So.
And these guys don't know it yet, but I'm instituting some sort of rule that none of them can leave now. Now that we've got them in here, that none of these guys can go. So.
That's all I had, Chair.
I have one thing. You talked about drive-throughs tonight. 901 North Main will be back at the council at the next council meeting. They had postponed that until a January meeting as well. They didn't send it back to you, but they postponed it. There was a couple questions about lot lines and some legal issues with some really 100-year-old deeds. And we have those figured out. So we'll be reporting back to council, and we'll see where that goes. But I just want to let you know it'll be back on the 19th, the 901 North Main. Sorry.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So then moving on, the date of the next meeting, and this is the special meeting, Thursday, January 21st, 2021 for special meeting. And then our next regular meeting will be Monday, January 25th, 2021.
May I have a quick point of privilege before we adjourn?
Sure.
So my wife and I have just purchased a house, and we'll be closing on January 25th, knock on wood. Unfortunately, that house is outside the city limits of Green Bay. And
shoot.
Yeah, in all likelihood.
You didn't get in there fast enough, Neil.
So I know. So in all likelihood, I'll be resigning upon successful closing of this house. But I just wanted to echo some of the comments regarding the staff. Really, it was an eye-opening experience of local government for me to see the incredible hard work, thoughtfulness, and creativity from Steph, Paul, David, Jessica, keeping all of us on track, Cheryl in your capacity as director, and also my fellow citizen commissioners. Just the time commitment everyone's put in, the thoughtfulness and thoroughness everyone's brought to the table, I think is really speaks volumes about the city of Green Bay and where we're heading. So my business will still be remaining in downtown Green Bay, and my heart will still be remaining in Green Bay, of course. Unfortunately, my address will be just slightly outside of the city proper.
We'll miss you.
Yeah, I think you planned that properly, Randy.
I know. Well, it was just, one of our criteria was we want to stay in the city of Green Bay, but we had about 4 other criteria, and we hit on all 4 of them. And unfortunately, this one just gave way. So we'll be joining the community of Howard, at least for the near term.
Well, Randy, how can I sabotage that? Where's that?
I think we should assign him to make peace between Howard and the Oneida, and that will take care of it.
Oh, well, that's all. I'll have that knocked out real quickly. But I likely will be looking to get involved through Brown County, through the Brown County government organization a little bit more, and so I'll pop up from time to time, I'm sure. But I've really enjoyed working with all of you a great deal.
We enjoyed you too, Randy.
Yes,
and we with you.
Yeah, we'll be sad to see you go. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Alder Corpus Dax and a second by Commissioner Petrowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So I guess we'll see everybody next Thursday.